A shy hotel cleaner discovered a hidden talent that transformed a CEO's life in just 24 hours. Clara tightened her grip on the mop handle, the familiar weight settling heavily against her palms. Each methodical stroke across the grand lobby tile resonated with the dull thud of her heart, a daily rhythm that echoed her unfulfilled dreams. She glanced at the exquisite chandeliers dangling overhead, their refracted light reminding her of the vibrant colors she once longed to wield on a canvas. But those aspirations faded into the shadows of her reality, living in a cramped apartment with her single mother and 2 younger siblings just a bus ride away. Her sacrifices had woven a life of necessity, leaving no space for self-indulgence. Today, the urgency gnawed at her, a palpable sense of desperation bubbling under her calm exterior. What if the art supplies she longed for were just beyond the door? A simple set of pastels awaited in the supply room, but she dared not venture there. The thought felt weighted, a betrayal to her family's immediate needs, a fleeting fantasy that could derail her sense of duty. As Clara moved through the bustling corridors, a surge of anguish pressed against her chest. Here she was, a 30-minute bus ride from the world of corporate ambition, trapped behind the hotel's polished facade. A gnawing fear bubbled within her, the fear that her own dreams of artistry were slipping away. What cost would she have to pay to pursue them? And when would she stop measuring success solely by the welfare of her family? The art supply room stood like a forbidden door opposite her loyalties, and then, amid her internal battle, Jonathan entered, a sharply dressed CEO whose weariness seemed to seep through his tailored suit. He stormed in, frustration and loss etched into his features, and their eyes met momentarily. She sensed his distress, the burden of an impending conference weighing down every part of him. "Just give me a moment," he muttered, his voice a fragmented breath under the harsh fluorescent light. In that instance, Clara felt a pull, an inkling of empathy she couldn't shake. Would he confide in her? Could this connection, this invisible thread between 2 disparate worlds, ignite something in both of them? Before she could second-guess herself, she stepped forward, her resolve strengthening. "Painting can help you express what you're feeling," Clara suggested, her self-doubt recoiling. What was she doing? A mere cleaner offering life advice to a CEO? Yet she pressed on, encouraged by an uncharacteristic spark. Would he see her, not just as a maid, but someone limited only by circumstance? Jonathan paused, his brow furrowing, contemplating her words. The art supply room morphed into an unexpected sanctuary where colors might lift their burdens instead of trapping them. As Clara took out the paints, her heart raced, each stroke of the brush marked with longing, a longing that demanded to break free. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The room buzzed with unspoken possibilities, the very air around them thickening with potential. Clara's mind was a tempest of thoughts, her familial obligations clawing at her conscience while the thrill of creative freedom beckoned. She glanced at Jonathan's concentrated expression, wondering if he could also escape the chains of expectation gripping his shoulders. What if he could redefine success, breaking free just as she wished to do? The tension swelled. Clara felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her chest as the clock ticked relentlessly. She was on the brink, ready to confront everything she had avoided: her art, her ambitions, her identity, her fear. What if she seized this chance with Jonathan? What if she didn't return to her responsibilities, to her family's needs? The conference was just around the corner, the world awaited his leap toward success. But in that fleeting moment, emotions crashed like waves, murmuring promises potentially leading Clara to her own awakening. A revolution of personal dreams awaited, yet uncertainty loomed large. The room seemed to constrict around them, painting their fears onto the canvas of impending decisions. Where would this newfound connection lead them both? As Clara glanced at her reflection in the glass of the supply room, no longer just a cleaner, but an artist in the making, the weight of her dreams hung precariously in the balance. Would she leap into an unknown future, risking everything she knew? The outcome remained uncertain, tantalizingly far yet agonizingly close, leaving both Clara and Jonathan hanging in the teetering edge of ambition. Clara's breath hitched in her throat, a pulse of anxiety vibrating through her as she fought to maintain composure. Moments stretched, drawn taut as if the universe held its breath alongside her. Jonathan's eyes, sharp and observant, searched her own, and in that charged silence, the potential of transformation felt almost tangible. A fleeting thought struck her: what if this was her moment? What if stepping into the unknown revealed not only a brighter path for him but also for herself? She could feel her hands trembling as she dipped the brush into a vibrant cobalt blue, a color that leapt to life against the stark white of the canvas. Art, she continued, her voice steadier now, allows us to explore emotions we don't always have words for. It becomes a language, a connection. Jonathan's brows knitted together, processing her words. The clash of ambition and uncertainty warred in his gaze. It was an expression she knew well, one she had worn herself while navigating her responsibilities. This was the crossroads, both frightening and exhilarating. As she painted, she caught glimpses of Jonathan's tension easing, if only by inches. The cogs of his mind seemed to whir openly now, his imagination ignited by the potential of creation. Clara felt an unexpected thrill flicker inside her, an echo of the artistic fervor she had almost silenced. Could they truly exchange burdens? Could vulnerability be shared? Yet fear loomed. What if this connection shattered under the weight of reality? She was still the worker and he was still the CEO, a gulf separating them that even art might not bridge. Doubt danced in the back of her mind like an untamed shadow. What if this indulgence propelled her into a tempest of loss? Realizing that Jonathan had fallen quiet, she shifted her focus back to her painting. Each stroke became an affirmation of self, stripping away layers of anxiety. The brush felt more familiar now, a tool, an extension of her will. She found herself aiming to capture the rawness in Jonathan's expression, blending colors that hinted at hope and turmoil. "Clara," he murmured after a long pause, "how do you do it? How do you weave emotion into something tangible?" It was the question she needed, the nudge to elevate her own burgeoning confidence. "You have to let go of control," she responded, her voice firm now, as if her revelations could reverberate outwards. "It's about surrendering. When you throw caution to the wind, that's where the magic happens." He nodded slowly, his face reflecting a mixture of contemplation and newfound awareness. Clara seized the moment. "We all wear different masks, hiding our struggles. But when we create, we're free. It reveals truths." His gaze sharpened as he followed her reasoning, and Clara could almost visualize the gears shifting in his mind. The burdens of a high-stress job began to crack, revealing a flicker of fascination. Perhaps, she dared to hope, he could understand what she had always known: the very act of creation was liberation. But just then, the low chime of the clock reminded them of their limitations. Clara's heart raced, time flowed like thin paint across a wet canvas, dragging her family obligations back into her consciousness. If she relished this slight taste of independence, she risked backlash from her reality, the weight of her choices looming heavier than ever. In a moment that felt monumental and fleeting, she locked eyes with Jonathan one last time, crystallizing the connection. Something unspoken coursed between them, a resonating understanding that both yearned for freedom, his from a corporate cage, her from domestic shackles. But could they truly pursue their paths side by side? As Clara's hand hesitated over the brush, she came to realize the choices laid bare before her: to forge ahead into the unknown and pursue her own dreams, or retreat back into the safety of obligation. With a conflict raging within, she decided to trust the flicker of hope ignited between them. Yet she knew that the future held more questions than answers. The moment weighed heavy as she stood poised between fear and freedom. Would it be art that ultimately bridged their worlds, or would it too fall to the pressures of expectation? Clara closed her eyes momentarily, letting the possibilities swirl around her. The next decision awaited, crouching at the edge of a new canvas, holding the key to her future and Jonathan's. Would they each plunge into the depths of their own desires together, or would fear tether them to a life half-lived? Clara's hands rested on the brush, poised between uncertainty and the need to create. The vibrant cobalt blue swirled on the canvas like an echo of her emotions. Could every stroke lead her closer to a truth she had buried beneath the weight of obligation? Her heart raced as she sensed Jonathan's presence beside her, yet the familiar pull of domestic duty lingered in the background, casting shadows on her budding ambitions. In that moment, the studio became her sanctuary, a space where the constraints of their separate worlds faded. Jonathan broke the silence. Clara, what if we could do something together? Something bigger than this? His voice was layered with hope and hesitation, his ambition palpable. His proposal ignited a spark. You mean, like collaborate? Clara felt a mix of excitement and fear welling up inside her. The thought of turning their shared vulnerability into a canvas of creative partnership was intoxicating, yet terrifying. I've never created anything with anyone before. Why not? We're both searching for something. He stepped closer, his expression earnest. What if we did an exhibition? Sharing this journey could inspire others, people like us, trapped in roles we never chose. Clara's mind whirled. An exhibition? The enormity of such an idea seemed almost ludicrous, but, intertwined with her instinct to go deeper, lay the thrill of possibility. But I'm just a cleaner, Jonathan. You're the CEO. Who would even want to see what we create? The self-doubt clawed at her, a remnant of a life spent doubting her worth. Art knows no hierarchy, he countered, his brow furrowing in concentration. What if we curtail this fear? Silence it. We can draw from our experiences, share our truths. Echoing her own thoughts, his words began chipping away at her doubts, revealing the ember of confidence she thought extinguished. You've stepped into new realms already, he continued. Why not embrace that spark? Show everyone that beauty can arise from chaos. Clara pondered his words. Each brushstroke she had applied moments earlier felt like a testament to her struggles. The bright blue tangle she had painted mirrored her internal conflict. But now, with Jonathan by her side, his vision intertwining with hers, she felt the pressure of expectation mixed with the exhilaration of possibility. Okay, let us do this, Clara said, surprising even herself. It was a decision grounded in instinct rather than analysis, a leap into the unknown. We'll create together and share our story. But it has to be raw, real. No artificial glamour. Jonathan nodded, his eyes igniting with excitement. Real. That's the most important part. Our vulnerabilities can be our strength. They began sketching plans, the tension between them shifting from uncertainty to a burgeoning camaraderie. The gears of both their lives began to move in sync, slowly easing away from their individual constraints. Clara felt herself unlocking as she envisioned a space filled with colors and brushed bristles intertwined with stories and emotions. But within her newfound determination lurked lingering doubts. As they brainstormed, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the moment they unveiled their concept, even the slightest imperfection could invite scrutiny from the world they were suddenly daring to enter. What if their authenticity was not enough? What if they faced rejection? The thought made her throat dry and stomach twist. Jonathan sensed her struggle. Fear is part of the process, he said softly. But I believe we have something worth sharing. Whether it's praised or rejected, we got to step away from the shadows. The shadows loomed in her mind, whispering half-formed thoughts of failure. Still, Clara clung to the flicker of hope ignited within the studio, empowering her to counter the shadows with determination. They would create, regardless of the outcome. As the last light of day spilled into the studio, Clara glanced at Jonathan, their shared ambition echoing between them. But even as they embraced the journey ahead, Clara felt a question nagging at her: could she fully surrender to this newfound desire, or would she allow the weight of her responsibilities to drag her back into the shadows? With resolve, she picked up the brush once more, ready to transform fear into color, a transformation that awaited them both. Yet, as she painted, an unsettling realization crept in: embracing this path would mean confronting not just the world outside, but also the inner tumult that had kept her captive for so long. A chilling thought welled up as Clara painted: would the truth they revealed through their collaboration be enough to withstand the scrutiny of those who saw only the surface? Would they remain tethered to their respective cages, or would they finally find freedom through their art? The early morning light filtered through the windows, illuminating the studio with a soft glow. Clara stood before the canvas, brush in hand, her pulse still racing from the leap she had taken the previous evening. The cobalt blue now seemed vibrant with potential, a reflection of her emerging confidence. Yet, as she stared at her creation, the thrill of ambition also mingled with a quiet dread. Was her spark enough to ignite the fire they needed? With Jonathan's presence buoying her spirit, she felt less alone in their endeavor, but doubts swirled like paint on her palette. Clara had spent years defining herself through the narrow lens of her job. Now, she was part of a creative partnership that demanded vulnerability. The implications stretched far beyond the canvas. What do you want to convey? Jonathan's voice broke through her reverie. He was seated at a makeshift table, sketches of ideas scattered before him. I want to show transformation. How fear can change into beauty, Clara replied, surprised at the conviction in her voice. But I'm terrified of how it will be received. Fear is just another color in the palette, Jonathan said, his brow creasing slightly, his eyes steady. Let us visualize it. Paint it. If we can transform fear into something tangible, perhaps we can inspire others. Clara considered this. Jonathan's words coaxed her to zero in not only on her own emotions but on the collective experiences they intended to portray. She began sketching ideas for scenes, a tapestry of struggles expressed in bold strokes and gentle lines. With each drawn figure, each story, she uncovered more of herself, peeling back layers of her internal conflict. Yet, doing so required an honesty she had never known. What Jonathan had proposed was not simply a partnership, but a commitment to face their truths together. With that notion came waves of recognition. She was more than a cleaner, she was an artist in the making, capable of profound communication through her craft. But that realization also brought with it the fear of exposing herself to judgment. Let us meet every morning, Jonathan suggested, tapping his pen against the tabletop, pulling her from her thoughts. We can set goals for what aspects we want to explore creatively. It was a practical move, yet it sent a ripple of anxiety through Clara. Could she commit to this? Was her desire to transform enough to overcome the instinctual pull back into the mundanity of her routine? Okay. The word hung in the air, heavy with consequence. She was stepping into an unknown space, leaving behind the safety of her structured existence. Yet, with each stroke on the canvas, she could envision the woman she wanted to become, vivid, unabashed, and unbound. As days turned into mornings of consistent collaboration, Clara found herself adapting to this new rhythm. Each meeting stirred something within her, propelling her forward into uncharted territory. She uncovered a part of her that thrived on creativity, blossoming against the backdrop of her apprehensions. But the gnawing feeling of inadequacy remained. The reality of their project became increasingly daunting. The errors and imperfections in her art echoed her hidden fears. What if the honest portrayal of their struggles was met with indifference? Or worse, ridicule? On one particularly tense morning, Clara stumbled upon an old photograph while organizing supplies. The image depicted her younger self, smiling shyly beside a makeshift canvas, proud of a painting she had once neglected to share. The stark contrast between that girl and who she had become was startling. What had stifled that joy? The realization hit her like a shockwave. She had carried with her the weight of expectations that did not belong to her. Holding the photograph, she proposed a daring idea to Jonathan. What if we include our past selves in our exhibition? The journey, the fears we've confronted to be here? Jonathan's eyes widened, and she could see the potential ignite in his mind. That could create a profound connection, he mused. It's real, it's us. Yet, beneath her budding excitement lurked a deep-rooted anxiety. Was she prepared to expose every layer of her life? To showcase the raw, unpolished truth to a world that had often levied judgment upon her? The path ahead grew clearer, yet it also became fraught with the shadows of her past. Clara felt herself standing at the edge of a precipice, looking out into the unknown. Would she take the leap? As she placed the photograph beside her canvases, she paused, the urge to retreat threatening to overpower her resolve. By confronting her fears, Clara faced a pivotal moment. Would she let her insecurities define her, or would she embrace the opportunity for growth, daring to reveal the full spectrum of her story? The canvas awaited, and so did her heart's whisper. The moment of truth was drawing near, as excitement edged on fear once more, urging her to decide. Would embracing vulnerability solidify her convictions, or would she stand paralyzed by her past? Each morning began to feel like a step into a new world, yet Clara noticed her earlier elation was gradually morphing into trepidation. The photograph remained displayed on her easel, a constant reminder of who she used to be and the vibrant pulse of creativity she once possessed. She could hear Jonathan's excitement echoing in her mind, the two of them committing to a shared exploration of vulnerability and truth in their art. But the ease with which Jonathan seemed to navigate his work layered on more pressure. Why couldn't she capture that same confidence? On the fourth day of their collaboration, Clara stood before the canvas once more, brush poised but unmoving. The streaks of color she had carefully laid down felt foreign to her again, the reality of vulnerability closing in. It was easy to talk about courage in the abstract, harder to cultivate it in raw, vulnerable strokes on a canvas. "Let me see what you've got," Jonathan said, stepping beside her, his enthusiasm contagious yet intimidating. His presence unnerved her. Each more candid revelation he divulged about his own past brought a pinch of jealousy. How had he unlocked this so easily? "I'm still figuring it out," she confessed, the words dangling heavily between them. "The more I think about our stories, the harder it is to actually portray them." "Then let us start small," Jonathan suggested, tilting his head to examine her work. "What was the first fear you ever transformed into beauty?" Clara's mind flooded back to grades and school, the abandon with which she painted in private, the exhilaration that often faltered when it collided with other students' indifference. Her memory should have erupted into colorful brushstrokes, but they instead felt muted, as if smudged by years of self-doubt. "The fear that I wasn't good enough, but I never dared to share it," she finally murmured, shaken by the admission. There was something compelling about this dialogue, a whisper that urged her to extract pinched emotions from the depths of her mind. "Let us build on that." Jonathan's response felt like an anchor, steadying her in tumultuous waters. "Try putting it on the canvas. Let it spill. We can edit later." Clara closed her eyes. With the right intentions, could she harness what had stifled her? She grasped her brush more firmly and let it fly across the canvas. At first, the strokes echoed the turmoil of her internal struggle, sharp, jagged edges, bursts of angry red melding with cool blues, clashing in a cacophony of emotion, unearthing her long-buried fears. Each motion released fragments of her past: the coach's dismissive smirk, the classmates who laughed softly at her passion as she floated through art classes, the echoing emptiness when she finally chose to abandon her path. This was no masterpiece forming under her hand, it was a documentary of scars that had yet to heal. Yet, it breathed life into her canvas, and she could feel the shadows lift, illuminating the first glimmers of potential. "I can see it, Clara." Jonathan's voice cut through her fervor. "You're capturing something fundamental. It's the clash of fear and courage, the very essence of transformation." As her brush darted across the canvas, she spiraled deeper, confronting the ghosts of her previous self. It was no longer merely about showcasing vulnerability, now it was about ownership. With every stroke, she acknowledged the flaws, the abandoned dreams and derailed aspirations. Yes, fear had been her immediate enemy, and yet, here it became an instrument. When she stepped back, breathless and a bit shaken, the canvas surprised her. The chaotic imagery revealed not just anger or loneliness but something else: hope. The vivid colors surged with an energy that felt both exhilarating and cathartic. "Use that," Jonathan prompted, grinning widely. "Let us channel that energy into our project. This is the foundation we need." For the first time since their journey began, Clara felt a pulse of excitement seep into her veins. The layers were transforming, she was stepping closer to unearthing not just her past but also her future. Perhaps this raw honesty could resonate with others who shared similar struggles. Yet, as light filled the studio and the presence of the morning sun washed over her creation, Clara felt a tremor of doubt wash over her. What if this honest portrayal laid her bare? What if the world outside met her truth with indifference? As these thoughts encroached once again, she found herself at a crossroads, balancing on a fine edge. Would she allow herself to release this truth, no matter the potential fallout? The question hovered, heavy in the air, urging her forward, and she could almost hear the echo of her younger self begging for liberation. The weight of self-expectation loomed, but this time, Clara felt a fierce determination breaching the surface of her fears. Embracing this tremor was key to her artistic evolution. As she placed her brush down, Clara caught her breath, ready to tackle the next step of their project. Would her revelation open the door to embracing her journey, or would it paralyze her once and for all? With a steel resolve forming within, she took a deep breath, preparing to confront whatever lay ahead, realizing the moment of truth was drawing ever closer. Clara blinked at her canvas, still swimming in a swirl of colors that vibrated with the energy she had unleashed. It was more than a mere depiction, it was an awakening, a signal that she was capable of exploring her depths. However, the reality of sharing this journey, her journey, hung in the air like a thundercloud ready to burst. Why does it feel so terrifying? She whispered to herself, her fingers trailing over the edge of the easel. Jonathan's encouraging words echoed in her ear, yet they felt distant, muffled by the rising tide of doubt. Was she truly ready to expose her vulnerabilities to others? The weight of that uncertainty seemed to crush her newfound excitement. What if she failed to convey her message? What if her fears and aspirations fell flat in the eyes of her audience? She shook her head to dispel the morose thoughts, reminding herself of the transformation she aimed to capture. The canvas still gleamed in the soft morning light, a testament to her burgeoning strength. And yet, it wasn't just about the art, it was about her. As she turned back to Jonathan, she noticed him absorbed in his own creative process. His canvas reflected a confidence she longed to embody. If she was going to channel her doubts into something meaningful, she needed to redefine her relationship with fear. "It's just a feeling," she muttered, grasping at her resolve. Yet, Clara understood that she had a choice: embrace this fear and reshape it into her art, or allow it to chain her to a past that no longer served her. The sooner she confronted her own demons, the sooner she could truly connect with others through their shared experiences. "Let us take it a step further," she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "What if I wrote alongside my painting? Make this a full exploration? An installation piece?" Jonathan asked, his interest piqued. "That brings storytelling into your visual work. It deepens your message." "Yes," Clara's excitement surged again, invigorating her fingertips. "What if I embedded snippets of my past right onto the canvas? Little fragments of writing that explain the journey behind the strokes? It holds a deeper meaning." "Exactly. You're giving voice to your past." Jonathan smiled wider. "That'll resonate. It connects the emotion behind each color with your narrative. Your journey deserves to be heard." Clara took a deep breath, her fingers itched at the edges of the canvas. Would it feel authentic? Her inner critic rumbled, but she quashed it down. She grabbed a charcoal pencil from her supply, dipping it into the deeper layers of her memories, and began writing phrases, single lines that encapsulated her fears, her longing, and her battle with self-worth. "I fear my voice is small," she wrote. "But maybe that voice can echo through color." Each letter felt like a liberation, a freeing of the burdens she carried for years. She let the charcoal glide across the canvas, feeling the tangible connection to her own truth. With every word, she cemented the idea that her narrative, however flawed, was worth sharing. Hours passed, their humble studio transforming into a harbinger for revelation, each stroke and sentence melding into an organic interplay between art and self-discovery. However, with every stroke of creativity came the nagging talent sink of potential rejection that gnawed at her resolve. What if the world was unkind? What if nobody understood? The unpredictability of reaction lingered like a specter on the periphery of her mind, threatening to hollow out her courage. Just as she began to wrestle with those thoughts again, Jonathan broke her reverie. "Clara, I think you're on the cusp of something magnificent." Yet it was his next words that took her breath away. "Let us present this at the gallery next week." Clara's heart raced. The gallery? The word felt monumental, like a roiling vortex of anxiety sweeping over her. "Yeah. We can arrange a presentation together," he continued, unfazed by her shock. "Your narrative and your work together, they're compelling. I believe in this piece. And I believe in you." The room went quiet, each breath echoing the weight of possibilities cascading before her. The gallery would expose her truth to the world, a world that had previously deemed her invisible. A myriad of emotions flooded her, battling against the allure of this unprecedented opportunity. In that moment of quiet, she saw herself standing on that stage, canvas in tow, heart wide open. Would sharing her vulnerability invite connection or lead to rejection? The stakes felt monumental, and yet, the thrill of possibility wafted just beyond the clouds of doubt. With a painful, exhilarating uncertainty settling within her, Clara faced the canvas anew. "Maybe this is what I've been waiting for," she thought. Would she dare to step beyond her fears and share her story, heart and art entwined? The answer hung in the air, electric with unfinished potential. Clara knew the time had come. The moment of truth awaited, and so did her chance for transformation. But first, there was the daunting task of preparing for that presentation. What if she stumbled? What if she faltered? As those thoughts overwhelmed her again, Clara faced a bitter yet unavoidable reality: the next week would demand everything she had and maybe a bit more. Clara stood before her canvas, her heart thrumming in sync with the urgency of her upcoming presentation. The week ahead loomed like a mountain range, towering and formidable. Preparing for the gallery felt less like a creative endeavor and more like a relentless climb, each step fraught with the potential for missteps and misjudgments. As she stared at her swirling colors blending into words that laid bare her soul, Clara realized she needed more than just passion to navigate this new territory. She needed a plan. It was an unsettling notion. Spontaneity had often been her refuge. Yet spontaneity could not be her anchor this time, not with something as significant as this at stake. "How do I even begin?" she muttered to herself, pacing the floor as she wrestled with doubt. The studio, once a sanctuary, now felt claustrophobic, heavy with expectations and pressure. Jonathan's words echoing in her head morphed into a cacophony of what-ifs. She instinctively picked up her phone, scrolling through messages. Articles on public speaking caught her eye. Each title seemed to jump off the screen, promising tips to channel nerves and flourish. With a deep breath, she began reading. Discovering practical methods to enhance her presence, to convey her passion. These moments provided her with a glimmer of hope, illuminating different paths she could take. But while she gathered information, a question nagged at her: would she ever truly be ready? She set the phone down and returned to her canvas, refocusing her energy. A revelation struck her. The heart of her message lay not just in the words she would say, but in the passion she poured onto the canvas. If she could embody that intensity, maybe she could turn the fear into fuel, reinventing her anxiety into a compelling narrative. Although daunting, she recognized that sharing her journey was an act of bravery. That bravery would resonate with others if only she allowed it to. Taking a deep breath, she resolved to work on a few strategies. First, rehearsal. Clara envisioned herself in front of a mirror, speaking to her reflection, refining the story she would weave together. She imagined articulating her fears, desires, and the artistic metamorphosis that brought her to this moment. The thought of physical motion gesturing to the canvas, tracing her brushes in the air added a dynamic layer to the presentation, a storytelling rhythm she could embrace. Secondly, Clara would invite Jonathan into this process. She caught herself smiling at the thought of him as a guide, a creative ally. Asking for support was not a weakness, it reinforced her courageous resolve. Despite the growing intensity of her feelings, Clara felt lighter. Her fingers danced over the edge of the canvas as if she were orchestrating a symphony of thoughts and emotions. She penned down bullet points of what she wanted to express, mapping out her core message, which reaffirmed her narrative of growth and struggle. It occurred to her that she had spent so much time pondering what might go wrong that she hadn't allowed herself to imagine what could go right. In the right light, this gallery could become the transformative experience she had yearned for, a bridge connecting her individuality to the broader tapestry of humanity. Just as she contemplated this connection, a thought jolted her. What if my fears have a voice too? She whispered, the idea sparking a fire within her. To confront her fears head-on would be another layer of vulnerability to her art, an invitation for others to engage with both her narrative and theirs. Suddenly, she was consumed by a new rush of creativity. Clara rushed to her canvas, scribbling fresh hopes, challenges, and the anticipations of what sharing her story might entail. Yet, as she layered these new emotions onto her canvas, doubts wormed their way back into her mind. Was she ready to bare her soul? Would her words resonate or drift into the void? Those thoughts danced in her head still, but she recognized that progress demanded more than fleeting hope. It asked for action. And so, she committed to making her rehearsal a priority, inviting Jonathan to join, and embracing each moment of discovery. With the night deepening around her, Clara sensed a fierce resolve hardening within. The greatest pressures often birthed the most beautiful creations. She found herself yearning, not just for acceptance, but for authenticity, the kind that could only emerge when she fully embraced who she was, imperfections and all. That eagerness to reveal herself in layers, like the colors on the canvas, propelled her forward. And now, with resolve reflecting off every stroke, she envisioned not just the presentation, but a surge of connection in a room full of strangers. The question remained, as she shed her fears in pursuit of authenticity, would she allow herself to shine in the brilliance of vulnerability? Vibrating with the edges of possibility, she felt herself on the threshold of a breakthrough, ready to confront her reality at the gallery next week. But Clara knew one thing for certain: she must bring her fears with her, not as a burden, but as a testament to her journey. It was clear, she had only just begun to grapple with the tides of revelation and change. The next chapter of her life awaited, laden with anxiety but also the promise of growth and understanding. What awaited her in that gallery was still cloaked in uncertainty, but the time to step boldly into that unknown was nearly upon her. Would she take that step? Clara awoke in the early hours, a tangle of anticipation and anxiety coursing through her. The sun had barely risen, casting weak rays through the window where sketches and color swatches lay scattered, remnants of yesterday's frenzy. She had just a handful of days left until the presentation, and the time felt both infinite and excruciatingly short. Today would mark a shift in her routine. As she brewed coffee, she replayed the private rehearsal scene in her mind, an intimate dialogue crafted by her hands and heart. Jonathan had agreed to meet her later, and his presence brought both excitement and apprehension. She questioned whether she had effectively captured her essence in rehearsals. Each day was a puzzle, and she sought to piece it together before the climax arrived. After a quick breakfast, she returned to the studio, where her canvas waited patiently. Stepping inside felt like entering a sacred space. The vibrant colors sang to her, demanding to be honored with authenticity. Would her portrayal of fear and vulnerability resonate? More importantly, would she even recognize herself after shedding her defenses? She approached the canvas and began layering more than paint. She infused her very being into the strokes. With each flourish of her brush, she unearthed small pieces of herself, the little girl who longed for approval, the artist hungry to connect, the adult learning to let vulnerability transform into strength. Folding these emotions into her art granted her a sense of purpose, as if a greater narrative was unfolding. Clara paused, stepping back to survey her work. However, self-doubt slithered back into her mind, whispering criticisms. Was this enough? Would her truth hold weight? The clarity that had sparked in her earlier now flickered like a stubborn candle. She wrestled with the urge to obliterate those voices, but instead, she chose to listen. Each doubt was valid, they were remnants of her journey, and acknowledging them was part of her evolution. She meticulously crafted a new bullet point about fear's significance in her narrative. Fear, she mused, was not merely an adversary, it was a thread woven through the fabric of experience, an essential element of her artistic identity. What if she could use it to engage her audience on a deeper level? She grabbed a fresh canvas, determined to shift her focus and explore this new idea in her artwork. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. Jonathan had texted, "Looking forward to seeing you at 2. Let's dig deeper." A wave of excitement washed over her, paired with a knot of nerves. She was ready to face Jonathan, to share not only her progress but her fears. The very nature of partnership was to embrace one another's vulnerabilities and emerge stronger. As the clock neared 2, Clara's heartbeat quickened, each thump resonating with determination. She set her tools down and took a calming breath, wiping her hands on an apron splattered with paint. No longer rigid under pressure, each moment felt like a step toward liberation, an invitation to transform fear into a shared experience. Jonathan arrived punctually, a reassuring smile etched across his face. The air crackled with an energy charged by the possibilities ahead. They wasted no time. Clara led him to her canvas, revealing layers of raw emotion. "These colors represent my journey, every struggle, every doubt," Clara articulated, her voice steady, though laced with newfound vulnerability. She demonstrated how fear had shaped her artistic practice and urged Jonathan to share perspectives as he examined each stroke. Hours drifted by as they dived deep into discussions about the intersection of vulnerability and authenticity. Clara realized she was not merely rehearsing words, she was revealing her essence, a tapestry of experiences that reflected innovation and resilience. She could witness the subtle shift in Jonathan's expression. He leaned into the conversation, eyebrows slightly raised as he interpreted the emotional weight present in her work. Clara could feel the walls she had erected around herself begin to dissipate, replaced by a burgeoning sense of empowerment. Near the end of their session, Jonathan turned to her, a thoughtful expression shadowing his features. "You have a tremendous gift, Clara. But the real magic lies in the honesty you're willing to share. By embracing vulnerability, you're inviting your audience to connect with their own." Her heart raced as Clara realized the truth in his words. She had always approached her art with passion, but now she was ready to weave her narrative of duality, her fear, her bravery, and the connection they forged. Glimmers of hope ignited a deep desire to harness her newfound clarity and embrace the presentation fully. But as she thought of the gallery, a new question began to surface in her mind. What if courage meant not only engaging with her audience's fears but confronting her own insecurities more ferociously than ever before? That night, as she lay in bed contemplating Jonathan's insights, she felt a shift within, an alignment of purpose. The gallery wasn't merely a venue, it was a stage for transformation. The moment was approaching when she would not just present art but offer her story, entwined with the very fears she had once allowed to control her. She had only a few days left to prepare, and the stakes had never felt higher. Clara knew one thing for certain: embracing vulnerability was not a destination but a continual journey. Would she muster the courage to face her deepest fears at the gallery? Would she allow her narrative to resonate beyond herself? The answers lay just ahead, waiting to be unearthed. And with resolve invigorating her spirit, she was ready to take that leap. Clara awoke to the sound of an alarm, the warm sunlight streaming through her window as if nudging her awake. The day was finally here, the day she would unveil her work to the world, a culmination of everything she had poured into it for months. Still, a whirlpool of emotions surged within her. Sitting on the edge of her bed, Clara clutched her phone, rereading Jonathan's last message: "Remember, it's not just your art, but your story that will resonate." She inhaled deeply, letting the air fill her lungs, needing the oxygen to quell the anxiety brewing there. Today, she wouldn't just display colors and brush strokes, she would expose her essence, her vulnerabilities, her fears, her triumphs. After a quiet breakfast, Clara took a moment to reflect in her studio, surrounded by the art that had become a sanctuary. It was here that she had confronted the depths of her soul, and now, those depths would be unveiled. She closed her eyes, envisioning the crowd, the curious eyes peering at her work. What would they see? Would they understand? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but it also ignited a fire within her. As she prepared her bag, packing a sketchbook and extra supplies, Clara felt a surge of determination. Today was not merely a presentation, it was a manifesto of her growth. She would capture the audience by embracing every shadow that flitted through her heart, illuminating the beauty within those shadows. The weight of that truth uplifted her, and with it came a clarity she craved. The gallery buzzed with energy as she arrived, the walls adorned with pieces from other artists, each a window into a unique soul. Clara felt an instant connection to their shared creativity. However, juxtaposed against the vibrant pieces, the bright lights, and the vibrant conversations, she felt the familiar sting of self-doubt. What if her work fell flat? What if her story was too raw, too personal? Those pesky voices wrestled within her, but she quickly countered them with a vision of her art, the colors, the passion with which she had painted. This was her moment, she couldn't shrink from it now. Jonathan arrived, his familiar presence like an anchor in turbulent waters. He greeted her with assurance, a quiet confidence that reminded her of why they had bonded in the first place. "Are you ready?" he asked. Clara nodded, swallowing her fears. As the doors opened and guests filtered in, Clara felt a shift in the energy around her. She watched people drift toward her canvas, their expressions morphing from curiosity to contemplation. Each time someone lingered, she took a step closer to embracing the vulnerability she had so meticulously painted into her work. "Can you tell me about this piece?" a visitor asked, drawing her attention like a magnet. Clara's throat tightened, but she squared her shoulders. This was her chance. Taking a deep breath, she opened her mouth, allowing her truth to spill forth. "This piece explores the duality of fear and bravery," she explained, her voice steadying as she spoke. "It reflects my journey, how fear isn't just something to be avoided, but rather, an essential part of authenticity." The visitor leaned in closer, the intrigue evident on their face, and Clara suddenly felt an exhilarating clarity. Sharing her perspective brought joy to her core. For the first time, she saw the art not as a reflection of her insecurities, but as a bridge for connection. Hours flowed like water, each conversation peeling back layers of her past while reinforcing a new narrative. Clara heard herself articulate thoughts she had only whispered to herself before. With each interaction, her confidence began to blossom, giving way to a sense of belonging in this vibrant world of creators. Yet, amidst the ebb and flow of encounters, one lingering question remained: did she possess the courage to confront herself even more deeply when it mattered most? The main event was yet to come, the artist's talk at the end of the night, where she would face an audience filled with people eagerly anticipating her full story. As the time approached, Clara's heart raced, caught in a cyclone of anticipation. Every conversation had nudged her closer to a revelation, but would she embrace the moment or shy away at the last moment? The questions loomed heavy, mingling with excitement. Tonight would be a test of her commitment to authenticity. Did she truly have the courage to bare her soul and allow others to see the raw edges? Would the exploration into vulnerability yield not only the triumph she sought but the deeper connection she craved? With every breath, Clara felt the anticipation grow stronger, urging her to lean into the experience, to claim her narrative as her own. The stage awaited, and so did her journey. As she peered into the crowd, she wondered if she was really ready for what lay ahead, because the moment to dispel her fears and to seize her truth was drawing nearer. Would she rise to this challenge, or once again retreat? The answer was just on the horizon, shimmering like the dawn. Clara stood backstage, feeling the electric hum of anticipation ripple through the air. The gallery was filled with curious guests who gravitated toward her artwork, yet the prospect of sharing her truth felt immense. Her pulse quickened with every tick of the clock, each moment inching her closer to the stage where she would lay bare the essence of her artistic journey. Today wasn't just about showcasing her art, it was about exposing the stories woven within her colors. As she peeked behind the curtain, she caught a glimpse of Jonathan standing amongst the crowd, his confident stance grounding her as he gestured animatedly with a fellow attendee. Their shared enthusiasm fueled her determination. Clara took a deep breath, inhaling the aromas of fresh paint, polished wood, and shared dreams. This was her arena, an extension of her past, a promise of discovery. The host of the evening stepped to the front of the crowd, welcoming everyone and introducing the artist. Clara felt a rush of adrenaline as she recognized her name being called. She walked forward, every step resonating with an urgency to be seen and to connect. The polished wood stage felt both foreign and familiar, a launching pad for her truth. The spotlight illuminated her, revealing both her vulnerability and resolve. Clara looked out into the sea of faces, and at that moment, something indescribable ignited within her. She remembered where she had begun, standing in the shadows of her circumstances, trembling under the weight of expectation. But now, she stood here, poised to share her narrative with authenticity and pride. "Thank you for being here tonight," Clara began, her voice steady and strong, cascading over the crowd like a warm embrace. "This exhibition is a reflection of my journey, one that traverses the tumultuous landscapes of fear and transformation." As she spoke, she allowed herself to feel the energy of her words. Each syllable flowed from the depths of her soul, resonating with the essence of why she first picked up a brush. She wove through the memories of her childhood, the exhilaration that painting gave her, and the numbing fear that had, for far too long, tethered her ambitions. "Fear has often felt like an adversary," she continued, her hands moving animatedly as if they were drawing the very images she spoke of. "But tonight, I want to celebrate it as a necessary thread in my tapestry. By embracing this fear, I discovered beauty, raw, vulnerable beauty even amidst chaos." Every word Clara shared resonated with the audience. They leaned in, captivated by her honesty, and the depth echoed in each stroke of her canvas. In a moment of serendipity, she glimpsed Jonathan in the crowd, a knowing smile on his face, the light of shared understanding glimmering in his eyes. His presence was both reassuring and invigorating. To punctuate her narrative, she invited the audience to examine the canvases around them. "As you look at my work," she encouraged, "don't just see colors and shapes, see stories, see lives. Understand the transformative power of creativity in confronting our most formidable fears." With renewed fervor, Clara navigated the delicate lines between vulnerability and strength. She shared the intricacies of her art, the bold blues representing her struggles yet hoping for healing, the gentle greens embodying growth, and the fierce reds her battle against self-doubt. As she concluded her talk, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. She had transformed her fears into shared experiences, and in doing so, opened a doorway for others to reflect on their own journeys. The applause that followed intertwined with her heartbeat, an affirmation that her narrative resonated beyond the confines of herself. "Thank you," she whispered, overwhelmed by the palpable energy radiating through the room. Clara stepped down from the stage, fully aware of how far she had come. The root of her insecurities had ebbed, replaced by a shimmering pool of self-acceptance and confidence. Later, amongst the mingling attendees, guests approached her, sharing their own stories of overcoming fear and embracing their creativity. Each conversation felt like a thread weaving her into a larger narrative of humanity, one fraught with struggles yet resplendent with hope. The culmination of her journey was reflected not just in her art but in the connections she was nurturing in this very moment. Clara realized she was no longer bound by her past. She had transformed her struggles into a beacon for others, proving to herself that the courage to confront her vulnerability had led to genuine empowerment. The night unfolded with laughter and shared stories, each interaction bubbling with potential. Clara felt whole, standing proudly as an artist, a woman transformed not just by the colors on canvas but by the unwavering strength that lay within her. As the event wound down, Clara's heart swelled with a sense of achievement she had never known before. She had faced fear, navigated through dimensions of self-discovery, and emerged victorious. The transformation into someone who embraced vulnerability as a strength marked a chapter she would carry forward into her life beyond the gallery. And at that moment, amidst the echoes of applause and affirmations surfacing around her, she understood the true power of sharing her story. Each brushstroke she created from then on would not only be an expression of her artistry but an extension of the authentic connections she cherished. Clara had broken chains that had once limited her, embracing the bright possibilities of tomorrow with solid confidence and a newfound belief in herself. She was an artist, unapologetically sharing her journey with the world. Her story was just beginning, and with her heart open, she was prepared to harness every color of her experience to paint the canvas of her future. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of backing the channel through these actions.